Welcome to the Billy Ho Forecast Show. Please subscribe and like the video. Remember, the more you share, the bigger we grow. Now, let's go! Hello, Billy Ho here again. I'm also joined by the DFS chef, Dave, and we are going to talk DraftKings pricing, go over some players, maybe some ownership for the Memorial Tournament coming up Thursday, Jack's Tournament. And first thing I'll do is introduce my man, David. How you doing, David?
I'm doing good, ready for another week. Again, obviously those that follow us that are in our Discord, or I even threw out some tweets. I made reference that you got to trust your gut. And last week on the show, I mentioned who I was going to go with. And then when I started constructing lineups, I went away from him and he won.
And guys like that. But sometimes you just got to wipe that slate clean. And let's get into this week. All right, Dave, I am going to let you have the floor first and let you pick out some guys you like. And what we're going to do this week is just a hair bit different. Since there was a price gap at 9,400 to 9,700, and I kind of lumped Cam Smith and Jordan Spieth can be lumped up with those higher guys. So we're going to go 9,700 and up. So get us started here, Dave. What are you looking at in this range?
Yeah, I mean, come on, these guys are all elite. You can make cases for every single one of them for your lineups, So it just kind of comes down to roster construction, possible ownership that we're looking at, and trying to find leverage up here. I hear a lot of people mentioning Xander in the industry this week, and he's actually ranking out number one, as you can see in my stat model. Yes. So, I mean, I definitely understand it. Can he win? Of course. I mean, any of these guys can win, but it doesn't seem like Xander has been winning. So, it's going to be difficult. I'm still doing rosters myself. The one guy I can say I'm probably going to fade up here is Cam Smith. I mean, you look at his course history here, it's not good. The best he's done since 2017 was in 2017, where he was 65th. I'm not paying $9,900 for some guy that's going to finish 65th this week. Is he a different golfer now? Of course. But he was that same golfer that we saw last year in 2021 when he missed the cut by a stroke. He had finished, I think second at the Masters that few weeks prior, leading up to the Memorial, where he missed his cut. So, Morikawa hasn't been looking all that great. I'm hearing a lot of people talking about possibly fading Rahm, that Rahm's not looking correct. But as of right now, I mean, I'm going to say, if I have to, go three guys up in this range from 97 to the top, I'm probably leaning towards Spieth. Spieth, I think, has more win equity than Xander. Does.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
So I'm looking at win equity, and as you can see, Spieth is ranking out number 2 in my stat model this week. So I'm probably going to edge Spieth over Xander because of the win equity. But then I'm going to look up top. Even though Cantlay has better history than Rory, I just think Rory is playing better right now. So I'll go to Rory. And if people are going to fade Rahm, and that's what I'm kind of seeing based on early ownership projections. From these guys that are 97 and up, I don't know if you're seeing it on Fantasy National. I use a different site for early ownership projections, but I'm seeing Rahm currently projecting as the lowest owned guy, 97 and above. So I'll gladly play Rahm. Is he all correct? No. I mean, he's definitely doing a little bit of struggling right now, but Rahm can flip the switch at any point. I mean, let's not forget he had to withdraw last year. He is, in everyone's eyes, the winner of this event last year.
Oh, yeah.
He's the back-to-back winner in 2020 and 2021. He had to withdraw because he tested positive for COVID after round 3. He was up by 6 strokes after the 3rd round. And from a strokes gain perspective, for those of you who watched Rick's preview, he was over 22 strokes gained total through 3 rounds, which is ridiculous. So
Unbelievable. Yeah.
I'll definitely play Rahm if he's going to come in at the lowest projected ownership this week.
Yeah, I agree with that. I wrote that was the first note I made. Definitely playing Rahm, course fit with a star, because if you remember, they started ripping up the golf course, and I know you probably watched Rick run good. They started tearing up the front 9 as they started the back 9 on Sunday that year, and 2021 was the first year they played on it, and Rahm was all over the field. Now, what people are saying is he is actually, I looked it up, and this calendar year 2022, he is terrible around the green and putting. And you can see the around the green 92 and 93 last 40 rounds on my stat model here. Well, I went back and looked at 1/1/21 through 11/30/21. So basically that calendar year, 33rd around the green, 23rd putting in this field. Then I went back to 20, which is 202 rounds of golf, 23rd around the green, 20th putting. He's not that bad. That is 202 rounds of golf. So that's a pretty safe sample size. The guy's not stellar around the green and putting, but he is accomplished. So if he just regresses back to his mean, he's going to be deadly. Rory, it's going to be tough between Rory and Cantlay. I want to give Cantlay another chance because I think maybe he'll get the ownership discount because of the missed cut at the PGA. And bent grass is his best putting surface. He lost 4 strokes putting in that missed cut in 2 rounds. He hasn't lost that much putting since last summer. So I kind of want to give him a shot. And also, I can't go away from Morikawa. He found the approach game last week, and he putter killed him again. He's lost in 5 of 6. And so he's due for one of those Morikawa spike putting weeks. And, everybody can say he's due, but he's gained 6 and 7 in approach in his last 2 or 3. So I'm digging that. And I'm with you on the fade train. You said Spieth. I think I might be comfortable fading Spieth too. I don't know for sure yet. I'll have to do some deeper dives. His course history is not terrible here. He's got some top 10s, and he runs it off, top 20s, top 10s, and whatnot. Definitely not considering Cam Smith. I thought about it earlier, but I think what I want to do with what I'm seeing everybody going to balanced builds this week, I mean heavily. If you go back and look at this ownership, you're going to start seeing once you get down to 9,200 and calculated what I'll be looking at tomorrow is the actual Fantasy Golf National lineups. That's going to give me a better idea of ownership. But if you can see between 15 and 20% on everybody from 93 on, everybody's eating in this general area here. And then they're going to drop down and grab Neiman and Mito are going to be 2 more. And of course, Patrick Reed's back in the mix, and Chris Kirk is going to round out a lot of balanced builds. And of course, you got Aaron Wise down here. That's going to be a lot of people's 6-man in. So I'm going to look to maybe try to even double stack up top and then skip this range on a few lineups just to see what happens. But I think let's get into the next round of guys. And since I was talking about them, I'll go ahead and kick it off. Will Z's out. I'm not going to play him. I think he's still getting some stuff together, and not that he's damaged from the playoff loss or anything. I just think lack of course history, and other guys in this range that are a lot more proven. Even Hovland. I mean, Decky. I think he's actually won this tournament back in the day. Matty Fitz has always played well here. So is Shane Lowry. And I'm really interested. My first guy is in Sung Jae. I thought he was pretty impressive on his first tournament back last week at the Charles Schwab. And he possesses one thing that I like this week, and what Jack Nicklaus has always done for himself is hit that power fade off the tee. And Sung Jae M is a predominantly fader of the golf ball. He irons off the tee. So is John Rahm. So those two guys I'm interested in. I think you can't avoid Cam Young. I might have jumped the shark a little bit on his ownership, because there's so many guys up here that are close to his range. He might get pinched out some. And your average DFS player still may not completely know him. I know he's had 3 straight, top 3 finishes at these big tournaments, but in the DFS community, he's well known. But then you got Homa and you got Davis Riley playing good. I mean, all these guys in this general area, it's going to be tough. I'm going to be slightly underweight on some of these guys, but I can't completely ignore them. And one thing I did want to say about ownership, especially in this range, is don't get overly hyped over just a few percentage points. Now, if you've got a guy that's 20% and then a guy that's 11%, 9 to 10%, that's probably a leverage zone. I would play Sung Jae over Lowry on ownership. I'd play Sung Jae over Lowry because I like him better. But if you got 17.1% Cam Young and 15% Max Homa, that's not ownership leverage. Even if it's 5 points, that's not ownership leverage. You need to get 8 to 12%, sometimes half the ownership, depending on what it is. That's what you're looking for. And I'll let you have the floor here, Dave. You tell us. I believe we're going from what, 8,500 to 9,700. So go for it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in agreement with you on several of these guys. I mean, obviously we didn't talk about this, but the course, you did mention it was, redone. I know that reading through it, Nicholas actually moved some bunkers back because of how far these guys are hitting it now. So he wanted those fairway bunkers to come into play. So I know he moved bunkers back. But what I'm looking at is the rough. I mean, that Kentucky bluegrass rough, right?
Yeah,
we're looking at like 4 inches, and I'm hearing it could be as high as like 4.5 to 5, because I didn't hear whether or not they're cutting it, but definitely we're looking at 4. So I do think that the importance of finding fairways is going to be very important this week. I mean, unless you're, some of those big bombers that can really gouge out of that thick rough. Most of these guys, if they wind up in the rough, are probably going to have to, just kind of chunk it out and, move on from there. Chunk it out and find their ball back on the fairway, and then go from there. Only those real big bombers can possibly even consider, hitting that out of the rough and going for the green. So I definitely am looking at guys that are going to hit the fairway when I look at this. And, I know you mentioned that you like M over Lowry this week, but it seems like everyone in the industry is on Lowry, and it's showing based on, the ownership projection. So in cash, if you're playing cash builds, I definitely understand going Lowry. And obviously that's why he's, one of Kenny's cash game cornerstones this week. He's just grading out exceptionally well. He's playing great. So in cash, I definitely understand going to Lowry. But in GPPs, I definitely can see, the pivot to M, because M does find the fairway as well. The only thing that he's lacking on, at least over these last 24 rounds, is he's slightly negative with the putter. I mean, not much. You can call him kind of net neutral, where Lowry is really gaining with his putter over these last 24 rounds. So it's something to look at. But when we talk that ownership leverage pivot, you're talking from what I'm seeing, 10%. 10% difference between Lowry and him. So that's where you're talking about gaining some leverage on the field in that 10% range. The young guns, Cam Young, Davis Riley, I'll definitely have some ownership on those two. I do think that course history here matters. I do think that you need to play this course. Not to say that you can't do well as a debutant, but I don't see them being in contention for winning as a debutant. Not, if you go back at the history of all the winners here, I don't believe there are that many people that have come in here the first time ever playing it and won. There are a few, but I don't think that the history speaks for it, where most of the guys that have won here have played this course, a couple times. So I'm definitely weighing that out. But like I said, I'll have some ownership on Young and Riley. So, I mean, I'm definitely looking at some of those guys. Will Z, I'm with you. I'm probably going to fade. I think I'm going to fade Hovland. I'm seeing Hovland coming in. It's a big time ownership right now, based on the site that I look at. Like Lowry, I think is showing to be one of the highest, and then Hovland is like up there as well. So I definitely can easily fade Hovland this week, and go to Fitzpatrick, or like you mentioned, I do like Homa. Homa has used that experience over these last couple of years playing here, and you can see that he's improved his play here. So I'm looking at guys like that.
Sounds good. I agree with you on. There was a couple of guys I checked off that I went looking in Fantasy National, which they have a new feature that you can take a look at. Let's see, what do we want here? Let's do Sungjae M. And under this distance and accuracy tab, you got a right to left, which is your draw, and then you got your left to right, which is your fade. And I kind of look for a significant, at least like that's 12%. 40% of the time he hits the ball off the tee, he's hitting the fade. To me, that's the go zone. That's what I was looking for. And that's just one piece of a puzzle. So I just kind of went through and marked a few guys. Homa was one of those guys. So I definitely like him. And I just love the way he's playing golf now. He's got so much confidence and he does everything well. And he just, I would play him. He's sandwiched right in between Cam Young and Davis Riley. The guy's already won twice this year. So, I mean, you got to ask yourself a question. Who's the better player? I mean, I would venture to say Max Homa is better than both these guys. Now, they're not he's not the new Hot Wheel that just came out last week, but, he's still formidable in all areas of the game. Down here, Corey Connors, I was thinking about maybe giving a shot at, but he's been so off. It's really tough. I mean, I feel like Neiman is he's going to be super popular, and he's got 2 missed cuts here, but I feel like the way he's playing golf, he fits this course well. Another guy that fits this course well is Keegan Bradley, who doesn't seem to have great course history either. So I'm finding myself battling between course history biased and just the way these guys are playing. But when you get down to it, I wanted to look at a few guys down here. Billy Ho, I think a bounce back. He missed his cut. The dude don't miss very many cuts. So this might be a bounce back. I really like Seamus Power. I think maybe Seamus Power has dispelled our myth that you can't play Seamus Power on long courses, because the guy seems to be getting it done on long courses. I mean, that 9th at the PGA Championship made a believer out of me. Matt Kutcher is another, I think, not a lock button, but pretty damn close to it with his course history and the way he's playing golf. He's got top finishes. So I'm looking for him to do well. I don't believe Bryson's going to play. I'm not 100 on that. Chris Kirk was a guy I mentioned in my first video. and he's playing. I mean, he is so close. I mean, a fifth and the 15th, and he has. It doesn't show it on your course history, but if you go back a few more years, he's got some top 5 finishes back in that day. So if you're playing the Chris Kirk of 2014, which is what he looks like he is, where he won golf tournaments, then bam, go for it. But I love Siwoo. He's another guy. There was 2 comps I was looking at. The one comp was the around the green game, which Siwoo has, and the other comp was hitting the fade off the tee, and he checks that box too. And of course, he's good in some of the other categories as well. And his course history, he's made a few runs here recently. So feeling real good about him, and Leishman fits that same bucket. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Dave. I hope I didn't take too many of your golfers. Kind of went on a rant there.
No, yeah, and you know, I think that when we're looking at I think 75 to about 84, Connors has been a little up and down recently. I do like that he's still one of the best ball strikers on tour. He is finding fairways, so it's definitely something I'm looking at. Where Neiman has been somewhat suspect on his driving accuracy, but definitely has been producing. He's missed the cut here the last 2 years. I can even see fading, even a lot of these lower 8K guys. Like, we didn't mention Berger, but I think Berger's an easy fade for me. I'll
agree with that. Yeah.
I can even see fading Connors and Neiman this week. Answer. I mean, he's accurate off the tee, which you like, but just doesn't seem right. So I can fade Answer. Keegan, you would think, would do a lot better here, but his course history is definitely not good. I do think people will go back to Mito, even though this is, the first time for him playing at this course. But Mito's really accurate off the tee. Seamus, like you mentioned, he's proven us wrong. He is actually doing and producing some good finishes on long courses. So I could see maybe going to Seamus. You mentioned him earlier, and he's gone up a few $100 from last week. But Patrick Reed seems to have found something in his game again. And you look at my stat model, especially when you go to that bets and player pool tab that I have.
Can't forget that.
Patrick Reed is up there. He checks the boxes on a lot of these things. Especially when you look at like strokes gained total at Nicklaus courses, he's 4th. He's played 20 rounds on Nicklaus courses since 2018. I mean, you see the big boys up there, but then you have Patrick Reed gaining over 2 strokes a round on Nicklaus courses. And then again, strokes gained total at Muirfield Village, since 2017. He's got 16 rounds, so it's something I'm looking at. Again, strokes gained total comp courses since 2017, minimum 20 rounds. He's 4th there. I mean, you see the big boys there, Rahm and Rory. So Reed really intrigues me. His course history here is really good. Mm-hmm. So I probably will have Patrick Reed in the pool this week. I'm in agreement with you. I mean, Bryson has continued to play, even though he hasn't played in the tournaments. He's still practicing. If he does play at 7,800, I know Kenny and Tambo were mentioning this yesterday, that if he does play at 7,800, they're probably going to have some ownership on him. You can see he's only, probably like 2%, which, I mean, if he does play, it might increase some, but I don't think it's going to increase much. So you would only need a couple shares of him to be probably overweight on the field. Kutcher's name was up there when you glanced over that bets and player pool tab on those things. So for me in this range, Reed and Kutcher are probably the 2 guys that are really going to stick out. I'm in agreement with you on Kirk. Kirk's right there. Great ball striker. He hits fairways. So I will have Kirk. Adam Scott is someone I might be looking at. I know he's not that accurate off the tee. He does spray the ball a lot. So that's the one thing that worries me. But for GPPs, I'll probably have some ownership with Adam Scott. And then I do like Siwoo, and you had mentioned Aaron Wise earlier. I like Aaron Wise. Anyone that's followed me over the years knows that Mark Leishman's one of those guys that was always on my list not to play. I did start going back to him this year. I've used him a few times, but even though he has good course history here, I'm a little bit worried on Leishman. I probably am going to be a fade on him this weekend. I'm seeing his ownership being projected for double digits right now. I definitely don't mind fading a double digit owned Leishman and going to, $100 more for Siwoo. It's not that big of a gap between the projected ownership, but I'll take those few percentage points difference on a double digit projected ownership Leishman and someone that's single digit ownership in Siwoo this week.
All right. Yeah, and actually Fantasy National is not showing a ton of ownership toward Leishman right now, but it's going to be hard to say. And what you were mentioning on Bryson, I agree with as well. But when you're talking about Tambo, you're talking about 150 lineup guy. So he's going to put 10, he's going to have 4%, so he'll have 8 or 10 lineups with Bryson in it out of 150, and he'll be triple the field. Now, what you do, 20 lineups, you can throw him in 1 or 2, and then you're 1 is 5%, so you're going to double the field just having the 1. So I don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah, the only thing that you obviously worry about with Bryson is, and like I've been seeing, he has been practicing, just not playing in the tournaments, but he's still out there practicing. But since he's changed to this, try and overpower the course, he's definitely not accurate.
Oh God, yeah.
He is that kind of guy that can overpower the rough. But at the same time, you're coming off of that wrist surgery. If you're going to try and overpower the the rough, especially when we're talking 4-inch rough, how much pressure is that going to put on that wrist, especially when when you're really torquing that club through such heavy rough. So that's the only thing that's suspect for me. I probably and like Rick always mentions, being early rather than late. In this case, I probably lean more towards being late than early on Bryson. I want to see how he actually looks before I really click on his name.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, Kenny mentioned the exact scenario that might work for him is if he goes out and plays 2 rounds and sprays it all over the place and misses the cut. And then everybody's like, they won't pay any attention to it. But the guy got 2 competitive rounds under his belt.
Yeah.
So we're going to polish it off here. I'm going to jump in here and get a couple of guys off my chest. Let's see. We have mentioned the first couple of guys I was looking at was Alex Noren, and he fell into the last bucket, but we failed to mention him. But he burned everybody at the PGA Champ when he was massive chalk. So I'm going to try to jump on that flop lag and see if he can't run it back. He's another one of those great around the green, good putter, also hits the fade off the tee. And then the other guy I was really interested in is I'm going to drop down here, actually not looking at too many guys in this range right here, maybe Cam Davis, but I'm going to jump way down and bring up a guy who I really, really like. Johnny Vegas is one of them. And then where is the other guy? Sahith Thigala. I really like this guy this week. He made the cut in 2020, and the dude hits the power fade off the tee. And he's pretty good in other aspects of the game. I think he can really, really take advantage of this course. And I heard a lot of people mention Brendan Steele too. But the other guy I noticed, and I really hate worrying about whether or not he's going to lose 5 strokes putting in 2 rounds, but Lucas Glover has been just ball striking the shit out of the ball the last couple of rounds. We're talking gaining like 7, 8, 10 strokes tee to green, and the putting hasn't been god awful. I got him pulled up here right quick. And he's not, at least not the worst on bent. I mean, he still finished 40th at the Charles Schwab and lost 6 strokes putting over the week. Now, to me, this is a perfect example of somebody who can do a bounce back. When you lose that many strokes putting, you generally run it back with an even like that. If he gets a 0.2 and ball strikes like that, you're looking at that for $6,500, and he's made almost every cut. I'm not going to say he's Brian Harmon, like somebody mentioned last week, that he's never ever missed a cut, which cracks me up. Those are like the famous last words when you say stuff like that. All right, Dave, finish this off here. 74 down. Who you like?
Yeah, couple names I'm looking at. He burned me last week. I was overweight on the field on him last week, so I have a feeling he's probably going to have low ownership. But I'm willing to maybe go back to Cameron Tringale this week and take a couple shares on him. Strong finish here last year. He had been making a good amount of his cuts recently until last week. So I do think you're going to get him at some reduced ownership. Surprisingly, a guy that's popping up, and his name popped up on several of those categories on that bets and player pool tab, was Anirban Lahiri. His name popped up on. Yeah, Lahiri's name popped up on there a couple times. So he's got me looking at him. I don't know if he's going to make my final, player pool, but as of right now, he's in the initial player pool. I do, I favor CT Pan over him. Obviously, CT Pan's been way more consistent. He's been a huge cut maker recently. Good course history here. Not great. But for 7,200, if he finishes anywhere where he's been 3 out of the last 5 years of this event, I'll take CT Pan to finish. Hopefully inside the top 40 or even inside the top 50 at 7,200. He's been playing better. He's got me thinking. I might actually take a couple shares of some Ricky Fowler this week. At 7,200. I see you
weird, isn't it?
I see you highlighted him before I even started talking about him. But his course history here, you can't argue his course history. I mean, definitely he's not the same golfer anymore. He's still searching, but it seems like over the last few weeks, I mean, he's made his last 3 cuts now. Maybe he's found something over these last few tournaments. And at 7,200, I'm willing to maybe take a couple shares on some Ricky Fowler this week. As we go under 7K, Russell Knox, definitely someone that you can look at. Great ball striker, good finish. Good course history here over the last 5 years. Obviously, I only go back 5 years of course history, but I'll definitely look at some Russell Knox. Troy Merritt's always someone that I like because Troy Merritt is making a lot of cuts, but what Troy Merritt does is he usually outscores his finishing position when we talk DK points. So Troy Merritt's someone I'll look at. Obviously, if you're going to play John Rahm this week, then maybe you want to go with his boy, his partner, and stack you some Rahm Palm. Ryan Palmer, not great. I mean, he's only played here obviously once over the last 5 years, but look at what he did. 2020, he was second. So I definitely don't mind Ryan Palmer. He's priced under 7K. Ryan Palmer is usually a guy that's, priced up higher. So when you can get Ryan Palmer under $7,000, I'll definitely look at some Ryan Palmer. Streelman grade. I mean, he's not grading out great. And I used some of them last week. And despite his good course history here, I can't do it. I'd rather play Patrick Rogers this week over Kevin Streelman, even though Rogers was horrible last year. I mean, when you see 109, when you look at my stat model, if you grade 100, you miss the cut by 1 stroke. So you look at 109, that's bad. But,
you really whiffed.
Yeah. But I mean, it's 6,800 and he's made several of his last cuts. He's a long hitter. He's a good putter. So, I mean, I don't mind being, he's probably going to be sub 2%. So, I mean, for me, I make a good amount of lineups. So for me, like one lineup with Patrick Rogers, like you said, is going to put me overweight versus the field. So I'll probably have, maybe 1 or 2 shares of Patrick Rogers this week. I'm in agreement with you. I do like you mentioned, Glover. Glover's been striking the shit out of the ball. We know he can't putt. I mean, that's just what he is. It's just, can he can he have that week where he continues the great ball striking and just get you through the cut? And obviously that's all you need. Pat Perez actually looks pretty good to me this week. And that would be, like you mentioned, Steele's getting talked up a lot. And I mean, I get it. Steele's a great ball striker, and he's got really good course history here. So I definitely understand Brendan Steele. Brendan Steele's actually the last guy in Kenny's cash game cornerstones this week. But in GPPs, if you wanted to take that a little bit of leverage off from Steele, I think Pat Perez looks pretty good this week as well. And you mentioned Tagala. I definitely am going to have to look at some Sahith finishing 32nd here last year. So I probably.
Yep. And we're about out of time for Dave, the DFS chef. This is Billy Ho saying peace.